Captain Lee Hyun walked slowly across the bridge of his ship, the UES Thunderstrike, and looked out at the endless stars through the big window in front of him. The stars looked like tiny diamonds scattered across black cloth, and they seemed peaceful and quiet. His ship was coming back home after 3 months of checking on human colonies near the edge of space where few people lived and danger was always possible. The bridge was not very busy right now because they were traveling through empty space where nothing interesting ever happened. Most of the crew was relaxing and enjoying the quiet time before they reached Earth again. Communications Officer Park Mina was sitting at her station reading messages from her family back home and smiling at pictures of her little nephew who had just learned to walk. She showed the pictures to anyone who came near her station because she was very proud of him. Engineer Kim Dae was cleaning his tools, very carefully like they were precious treasures. He had been working on spaceships for 20 years, and he treated every piece of equipment like it was part of his own body. His hands moved with practiced skill as he checked each tool and put it back in exactly the right place. He was thinking about his daughter who was starting school next week, and he had promised to bring her a special rock from an alien planet. Weapons specialist Choi Bin was also cleaning his equipment, but his tools were different from Kim Dae's tools. Choi Bin took care of the weapons systems that protected the ship from pirates and other dangers. He worked quietly and methodically, checking every connection and testing every system. His weapons had never been used in real combat, but he kept them ready anyway because that was his job, and he took it very seriously. Security Chief Yoon Hana was walking around the ship, checking on the crew and making sure everything was secure. She stopped to talk with different people and ask them how they were feeling. Everyone seemed happy and relaxed, which made her job easier. When people were comfortable, they worked better and made fewer mistakes. She had been doing this job for 5 years, and she knew how to read people's faces and tell when something was wrong. Navigator Oh-sung was studying star charts and calculating their course back to Earth. He loved looking at the maps of space and planning the safest and fastest routes between planets. His computer screen showed thousands of stars and planets and space stations connected by lines that showed the best paths for spaceships to travel. He was very good at his job and had never gotten lost in space, even when other navigators made mistakes. The crew members were talking and laughing, together like a big family. They shared stories about their homes and families and dreams for the future. Some of them played card games during their free time, while others listened to music or read books from Earth. Everyone felt safe and comfortable because they trusted each other completely and they knew their ship was strong and well built. Cook Yang Min was preparing dinner in the ship's kitchen, and the smell of food was starting to spread through the corridors. He was making traditional Korean dishes that reminded everyone of home. The smell made people smile and feel happy because it brought back memories of family dinners and celebrations. Yang Min took pride in making sure everyone ate well because he knew that good food helped people stay healthy and strong during long trips through space. Medical Officer Dr. Song Hee was checking the ship's medical supplies and making sure everything was ready in case someone got hurt or sick. She hoped she would never need to use most of her equipment, but she kept everything clean and organized anyway. She had studied medicine for many years, and she cared deeply about keeping the crew healthy and safe. The ship itself was not the biggest or most famous ship in the human fleet, but it had some special secrets that most people did not know about. The outside looked plain and simple with gray metal walls and normal-looking weapons that seemed like standard equipment, but hidden inside the ship were systems and weapons that were much more advanced than they appeared to be. Captain Lee Hyun knew about these secrets because he had been chosen specially to command this ship. The military leaders had picked him because he was calm under pressure and could make good decisions. Quickly, he had commanded other ships before, but never one like the Thunderstrike, which was much more powerful than it looked. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft humming of computers and the gentle sound of air moving through the ventilation system. Everyone was doing their job, but nobody felt stressed or worried. This was supposed to be an easy trip home through safe space where nothing dangerous ever happened. They had been traveling for 6 hours since their last stop, and they expected to reach Earth in 2 more days. Park Mina was humming a popular song while she monitored the communication systems for any messages from Earth or nearby ships. The channels were quiet, which was normal for this part of space. Very few ships traveled through this area because there were no planets or space stations nearby. It was just empty space with nothing but stars and cosmic dust. Kim. Day finished cleaning his tools and started checking the engines to make sure they were running properly. Everything looked good, and the ship was moving smoothly through space at exactly the right speed. The engines were very advanced and much more powerful than they needed to be for normal travel, but Kim Day did not question why the ship was built. This way, he just made sure everything worked perfectly. Choi Bin completed his weapons check and sat back in his chair, feeling satisfied that all systems were ready. His weapons control panel looked simple with just a few buttons and switches, but he knew there were hidden systems connected to it that could do amazing things if they were ever needed. He had been trained to use these systems, but he had never seen them in action. The crew did not know that their peaceful trip was about to become very exciting. They thought they would reach Earth without any problems, and then they would have a few weeks of vacation before their next mission. They were looking forward to seeing their families and friends, and eating fresh food, and walking on solid ground again. Captain Lee Hyun looked at his crew and felt proud of how well they worked together. They were good people who cared about each other and did their jobs with skill and dedication. He hoped they would never have to face real danger, but he knew they would be brave and do their duty if the time came. The stars outside continued to shine peacefully, and the ship moved smoothly through the darkness. Everything seemed normal and quiet and safe. But sometimes the most dangerous things happen when you least expect them, and today was going to be one of those days when everything changed in just a few seconds. Park Mina was still looking at pictures of her nephew when her computer screen suddenly started flashing red lights and making loud beeping sounds. She had never seen her equipment act like this before, and for a moment she just stared at the screen, trying to understand what was happening. The numbers and symbols on her display were changing so fast she could barely read them. Her hands shook a little as she pressed buttons to try to figure out what was causing the emergency signals. When she finally understood what her computer was telling her, she felt her stomach drop like she was falling. The screen showed dozens of big objects appearing out of nowhere in the space around their ship captain. Lee Hyun, she called out in a voice that was higher than normal. "We have a big problem, sir. There are many ships surrounding us. They just appeared from hyperspace and they are moving into attack positions." Captain Lee Hyun walked quickly to her station and looked at the display screen. His calm expression changed as he saw the tactical information. His years of training kicked in and he started thinking about what options they had. The enemy ships were positioned in a perfect circle around the Thunderstrike, which meant they knew what they were doing and had planned this attack carefully. Navigator Oh Sung checked his instruments twice to make sure they were in the right place. "Captain," he said with confusion in his voice, "according to all my charts, we are definitely in neutral space. These coordinates have been open territory for over 100 years. No one owns this part of space. The alien ships were not like any design the humans had ever seen before. They had long curved hulls that looked like they were made from polished silver metal. Each ship was about the same size as the Thunderstrike, but there were 50 of them moving in perfect formation, like they had practiced this many times before. Their weapons were already pointed at the human ship, and energy readings showed they were charging up for battle. Engineer Kim Dae ran to his station and started checking all the ship systems to make sure they were ready for whatever was about to happen. His engines were running perfectly, and all backup systems were online. He had never been in a real space battle before, but he had trained for this situation many times. His hands moved quickly over his controls as he prepared the ship for combat. The biggest alien ship moved closer than the others, and a communication signal came through the radio. The voice that spoke was deep and rough, and the accent was strange. The words were in human language, but they were pronounced wrong, like the speaker had learned them from a book instead of hearing them spoken. "Attention, primitive vessel," the alien voice said with arrogance and contempt. "You are trespassing in Corvani space. This territory belongs to the mighty Corvani Empire and no other ships are allowed here. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Your pathetic little ship cannot hope to match our superior firepower and advanced technology. Captain Lee Hyun looked around at his crew and saw that some of them looked scared, while others looked angry, but they were all looking to him for leadership. He had been in difficult situations before, and he knew that staying calm was the most important thing he could do right now. His crew needed to see that he was not afraid. He walked to the communication station and activated the transmitter. "This is Captain Lee Hyun of the United Earthship Thunderstrike," he said in a clear, strong voice. "We are traveling through neutral space on a peaceful mission according to all galactic treaties and agreements. Please stand down your weapons and allow us to continue our journey. We have no quarrel with the Corvani Empire, and we wish to avoid any conflict." The alien admiral started laughing, and the sound came through the radio like the noise of metal scraping against stone. "Peaceful," he said between laughs. "You humans are either very brave or very stupid to travel through space with only one small ship. No single vessel can stand against the power of the Corvani Empire. We have conquered 17 star systems and destroyed thousands of enemy ships. The Corvani Empire was known throughout this part of the galaxy as a warrior race that believed strength was the only thing that mattered. They had been expanding their territory for over a century, and they had never been defeated in battle. Their ships were fast and their weapons were powerful, and they had never met an enemy they could not crush. Admiral Vex was the commander of this fleet, and he was very proud of his record of victories. He had destroyed many enemy fleets and captured dozens of planets for the Empire. He looked at the single human ship on his display screen and felt amused that such a small vessel would dare to resist him. "You have 10 minutes to prepare for boarding," Admiral Vex announced over the radio. "We will take your ship and your crew as prisoners. If you try to fight us or run away, we will destroy you completely. The choice is yours, but either way, your ship will belong to the Corvani Empire. Before this day is over, security." Chief Yoon Hana moved to her battle station and started checking the ship's defensive systems. She had hoped this day would never come, but she had trained for it many times. The crew was looking nervous, but they were following their emergency procedures exactly as they had. Practiced weapons specialist Choi Bin sat at his control panel and waited for orders from the captain. His fingers rested lightly on the switches that controlled the ship's weapons, but he did not activate them yet. He could see that the alien ships were moving into better attack positions, and he knew they would start shooting soon. Dr. Song-hee prepared the medical bay for casualties and made sure all her emergency supplies were ready. She hoped no one would get hurt, but she knew that battles in space were dangerous, and people often got injured when ships were damaged by weapons. Fire cook Yang Min secured his kitchen and made sure nothing would fall and hurt someone when the ship started moving quickly during combat. He had served on military ships before, and he knew that space battles involved a lot of sudden acceleration and sharp turns. The 10 minutes that Admiral Vex had given them seemed to pass very quickly. The crew worked efficiently to prepare for battle, but they all wondered if their single ship could survive against 50 enemy vessels. The odds seemed impossible, but they trusted their captain, and they would do their duty no matter what happened. Captain Lee Hyun stood in the center of the bridge looking calm and confident, even though he knew his crew was scared. He had not told them about the special systems hidden in their ship, because those were classified secrets. But he knew that the Thunderstrike was much more dangerous than it appeared to be. The alien ships finished moving into their attack positions, and Admiral Vex sent one final message. "Your time is up, human captain. Prepare to be boarded or destroyed. The mighty Corvani fleet will show you the price of defying our empire, Captain Lee." Hyun looked at his crew one more time, and then he made his decision. Captain Lee Hyun walked slowly to his command chair like he had all the time in the world, while 50 alien warships pointed their weapons at his ship. The crew watched him with wide eyes, wondering what he was thinking and why he seemed so calm when they were about to be destroyed. He sat down in his chair and looked at the main display screen where the enemy fleet was shown in perfect detail. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship-wide communication system. His voice was steady and strong without any fear or worry. Battle stations secure for combat operations, red lights began flashing throughout the ship, and a gentle alarm started sounding. But it was not the panicked, urgent alarm that most ships used instead. It was calm and controlled, like everything was going exactly according to plan. The crew moved to their battle stations with practiced efficiency, even though most of them had never been in a real fight before. They had trained for this situation, hundreds of times in simulations, but this was different because real enemy ships were really trying to kill them. Their hands shook a little as they prepared their equipment, but they did their jobs anyway. Park Mina activated the combat communication systems and started monitoring all radio frequencies to listen for enemy transmissions. She could hear the alien commanders talking to each other, and they sounded very confident that they would win this battle easily. They were already discussing how to divide up the human ship and crew after they captured them. Navigator Osung plotted emergency escape routes in case they needed to run away quickly, but the alien ships had them completely surrounded, and there was nowhere to go. The nearest human base was 3 days away at maximum speed, and they would never make it past the enemy blockade. He kept working anyway, because that was his job. Engineer Kim Dae monitored the ship's power systems and made sure the engines were ready for combat maneuvers. He noticed that the power output was much higher than normal, and systems he had never seen before were coming online automatically. His engineering training told him that the ship had hidden capabilities, but he did not know what they were. The Corvani fleet was getting ready to attack, and Admiral Vex was feeling very pleased with himself. He had destroyed many enemy ships before, and this would be another easy victory to add to his record. The human ship looked ordinary and weak compared to his advanced warships with their powerful weapons and thick armor. Target their engines. Admiral Vex ordered his gunners fire warning shots to show these humans what Corvani weapons can do. Let them see how hopeless their situation is before we capture them. Bright blue energy bolts streaked through space from the alien ships toward the thunderstrike. The crew braced for impact and waited to feel the ship shake when the weapons hit them, but instead of explosions and damage, the energy beams struck something invisible several meters away from the ship and simply disappeared like they had hit a wall made of nothing. The alien weapons fire created pretty light displays, as it was absorbed by shields that could not be seen. The energy just vanished without causing any damage at all to the human ship. Captain Lee Hyun smiled slightly as he watched the confused reactions of his crew who had expected to be badly hurt by now. Chief Engineer Kim Dae looked at his control panel in amazement. "Sir," he said with wonder in his voice, "our reactive armor is holding at 100% efficiency. Those alien weapons are not even scratching our outer hull. The energy is being completely absorbed and converted to power. For our own systems." Admiral Vex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His weapons, which could punch through the armor of any known starship, had done absolutely nothing to the human vessel. The energy readings showed that his plasma bolts had simply vanished when they reached the target. This was impossible according to everything he knew about space. "Combat increase power to maximum," he shouted at his weapons officers. "All ships target that vessel and fire everything you have. Show them the full might of the Corvani Empire." The space around the thunderstrike suddenly became as bright as a small sun as 50 alien warships opened fire at the same time. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and quantum torpedoes filled the darkness with deadly light. The barrage continued for a full minute, with enough destructive power to completely destroy a small moon or space station. Every weapon in the Corvani fleet was firing at maximum power, creating a spectacular light show that could probably be seen from nearby star systems. The aliens were using enough energy to power a small city for a year, just to destroy one human ship. They were absolutely certain that nothing could survive such a massive attack. When the weapons fire finally stopped and the bright lights faded away, the crew of the Thunderstrike looked around in amazement. They were all still alive, and their ship had not been damaged at all. The hull was not even scratched, and all systems were working perfectly. It was like the attack had never happened. The alien fleet floated in space, staring at the undamaged human ship that should have been reduced to floating debris and cosmic dust. Their most powerful weapons had failed completely, and they did not understand how this was possible. Their computers could not explain what had happened. Security Chief Yoon Hana checked the damage reports from all sections of the ship. "No damage anywhere," she reported with amazement in her voice. "All systems are operating at full capacity." The alien attack had no effect on us at all. Captain Lee Hyun looked at the display showing the confused alien fleet and nodded with satisfaction. The Thunderstrike had absorbed every joule of energy from the enemy attack and converted it to power for its own systems. The ship was actually stronger now than it had been before the battle started. "Well," he said in a conversational tone like he was discussing the weather. "I believe you have had your turn, Admiral. Now it is our turn to demonstrate what human technology can do." Weapons Officer Choi Bin had been waiting patiently at his station while the aliens wasted their ammunition. He looked at his control panel, which appeared simple and ordinary, but he knew it was connected to weapon systems that most people could not even imagine. The time had finally come to show the galaxy what humans were really capable of. "Captain," he said with excitement in his voice, "request permission to demonstrate our point defense systems. Let these aliens see what real weapons can do." "Permission granted," Captain Lee Hyun replied calmly. "Give them something to think about, but keep it proportional. We only need to make our point clear." Choi Bin smiled as he activated systems that had never been used in combat before. His fingers moved over controls that could unleash destruction beyond imagination, but he was careful to use only the minimum force necessary. The aliens were about to learn that humans were much more dangerous than they appeared. Weapons Officer Choi Bin placed his hands on the control panel that looked so ordinary and simple that most people would think it belonged on a cargo ship rather than a warship. The buttons and switches appeared to be standard military equipment, but they were connected to weapon systems that used technology far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen before. What happened next took exactly 12 seconds from beginning to end, but those 12 seconds would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The demonstration would be remembered and studied by military historians for centuries as the moment when humanity announced its arrival as a major force in space. Tiny points of light began to emerge from hidden ports along the hull of the Thunderstrike. The lights were so small and dim that they looked harmless, like stars being born in the darkness of space. They moved slowly and gently through the vacuum without making any sound or creating any visible energy signatures that the alien sensors could detect. Each point of light was actually a focused gravity beam that could manipulate matter at the atomic level. The technology was based on principles of physics that the Corvani scientists had never discovered and would not understand even if it was explained to them. These weapons could tear apart the molecular bonds that held matter together. The beams reached across space faster than the alien crews could react, moving with the speed of thought itself. They touched 10 of the Corvani warships with surgical precision, selecting their targets based on calculations that took into account the position and movement of every vessel in the enemy fleet. Admiral Vex watched his tactical display in growing horror, as 10 of his finest warships simply began to come apart. The ships did not explode in flames or break into large pieces like normal battle damage would cause. Instead, they seemed to dissolve like sugar cubes dropped into hot water. The molecular structure of the alien hulls started to break down as the gravity beams disrupted the atomic forces that held the metal together. Steel plates that had been forged in the heart of stars and had survived dozens of previous battles simply stopped existing. The process was quiet and clean without any explosions or debris. The crews of the disintegrating ships had no time to send distress signals or escape in lifeboats because everything happened too quickly. One moment they were sitting in their battle stations preparing for victory, and the next moment they were scattered atoms floating in space. The 10 warships became clouds of cosmic dust that sparkled briefly in the starlight. The remaining 40 Corvani vessels watched in stunned silence as their comrades vanished completely from existence. Their sensors could not detect any wreckage or survivors because there was nothing left to find. The gravity beams had reduced 10 of the most advanced warships ever built by their civilization to their basic elements. Admiral Vex felt his knees go weak as he realized what he had just witnessed. His voice came over the communication channel, but it was no longer the strong, confident tone of a warrior commander. Instead, it was small and frightened, like a child who had seen something terrible. "What are you?" he whispered into the radio. His hands were shaking as he stared at his display screen where 10 of his ships had simply disappeared. "What kind of monsters are you humans?" Captain Lee Hyun heard the fear in the alien admiral's voice and felt a moment of sympathy for him. The Corvani had thought they were dealing with primitive technology and weak defenses, but instead, they had encountered weapons that were far beyond their understanding. It must be terrifying to see such power demonstrated so casually. We are humans. Admiral Captain Lee Hyun replied in a gentle voice that held no anger or hatred. And we really do not like being threatened. We came here in peace, and we offered to leave, peacefully. But you chose to attack us instead. The crew of the Thunderstrike looked at their weapons display in amazement as they realized what their ship was truly capable of. They had known it was special, but they had never imagined it carried such devastating firepower. Engineer Kim Dae checked his power readings and saw that the gravity beams had used less than 1% of the ship's total energy capacity. Park Mina intercepted frantic communications from the surviving Corvani ships as they tried to report what had happened to their commanders back home. The alien crews were speaking in their own language, but the computer was translating their words automatically. Most of them were asking for permission to retreat or surrender security. Chief Yoon Hana monitored the movements of the remaining enemy vessels and saw that they were backing away from the Thunderstrike to maximum sensor range. The aliens were clearly terrified and no longer interested in fighting. They had learned that humans were much more dangerous than they appeared. Dr. Song-hee realized that she would not need to treat any casualties because the human ship had not been damaged at all during the battle. The alien attack had been completely ineffective against their advanced defensive systems. She began to understand that their ship was not just unusual, but truly revolutionary. Cook Yang Min had secured his kitchen for combat, but now he started thinking about preparing a celebration meal for the B crew. They had just won their first battle against overwhelming odds, and that deserved to be remembered with good food and fellowship navigator. Oh Sung calculated that they could resume their course to Earth at any time because the alien ships were no longer blocking their path. The enemy fleet was maintaining a respectful distance and did not seem interested in continuing the fight. They had learned a painful lesson about human capabilities. Weapons specialist Choi Bin looked at his control panel and realized that he had barely used any of the ship's true firepower. The gravity beams were just one of many weapon systems hidden throughout the Thunderstrike. He wondered what would happen if they ever had to use the really powerful weapons that were still kept secret. Captain Lee Hyun stood up from his command chair and looked at his crew with pride. They had performed their duties perfectly during their first real combat situation, and they had shown that humans could defend themselves against any threat. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The demonstration was over, but its effects would last for generations. The news of what had happened would spread to every corner of known space, and alien civilizations would have to reconsider their assumptions about human military capability. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had officially begun. Admiral Vex continued to stare at the space where his 10 warships had been destroyed and tried to understand how such a thing was possible. His empire had ruled this region of space for over a century, but now he knew that a new power had arrived that could challenge even the mighty Corvani fleet. The surviving Corvani ships had retreated to the edge of sensor range, but they did not flee the star system completely. Admiral Vex was too shocked and confused to give coherent orders to his fleet, and his officers were too terrified to ask him what they should do next. They had just watched the impossible happen, and their minds were struggling to accept what they had seen. Communications. Officer Park Mina was monitoring all the radio frequencies and listening to the frantic transmissions. Between the alien ships, the Corvani crews were speaking rapidly in their own language, and her computer was working hard to translate everything they were saying. Most of the conversations were expressions of fear and disbelief. Captain, she reported, with fascination in her voice. They are sending emergency broadcasts to every Corvani colony and military base in this sector. They are requesting immediate reinforcements and calling this a code black situation. The aliens are describing our ship as having impossible weapons and defenses. Let them, Captain Lee Hyun replied with surprising calmness. In fact, help them out. Boost their signal strength so the message reaches even further into their territory. I want every Corvani commander to hear exactly what happened here today. The crew looked at their captain with confusion and surprise. Security Chief Yoon Hana voiced what everyone was thinking. Sir, if more alien fleets come to investigate, we could be facing hundreds or even thousands of enemy ships. Even with our advanced weapons, that seems like a dangerous situation. Captain Lee Hyun smiled, but his expression was not entirely pleasant. Officer Hana, how long have you served aboard the Thunderstrike? he asked in a patient voice. 3 years, Captain. She replied, wondering where this conversation was leading. And in those 3 years, have you ever seen our weapon systems operating at full power? Have you ever seen what this ship can really accomplish when we stop holding back and use everything we have available? Security Chief Yoon Hana thought about his question carefully and realized that she had never seen their ship in a real battle before. All their previous missions had been routine patrols, rescue operations, and diplomatic visits to human colonies. They had never faced a genuine enemy that required them to use their true capabilities. Actually, no, sir, she admitted. I have never seen our full combat potential demonstrated. The gravity beams we just used seemed incredibly powerful, but you are suggesting that was not our maximum capability. The Thunderstrike is not really a patrol vessel, Captain Lee Hyun explained to his crew, who were listening with growing amazement. This ship is a prototype, one of only 3 vessels in the entire human fleet that has been equipped with the most advanced weapons and defense systems that our scientists have ever developed. Engineer Kim Dae looked at his control panels with new understanding as he realized that many of the systems he maintained were far more sophisticated than he had been told. The power readings and energy signatures he had been seeing made sense now. If the ship was carrying experimental technology, we have quantum cascade weapons that can destroy entire fleets in minutes. Captain Lee Hyun continued 0-point energy shields that can absorb unlimited amounts of incoming fire, and an artificial intelligence system that can calculate the destruction of a complete star system faster than you can blink your eyes, as if his words had summoned her. A calm, pleasant female voice suddenly filled the bridge, speaking from hidden speakers throughout the ship. Hello, crew members. I am Arya, the ship's tactical artificial intelligence. I have been listening to this conversation with great interest, and I must say, it has been quite educational for me as well. The crew stared at each other in shock because none of them had known their ship carried a true artificial intelligence. Most military vessels had sophisticated computer systems, but Arya was something completely different. She was a genuine thinking machine with her own personality and decision-making abilities. I have been operating quietly in the background for the past 3 years. Arya continued helping to manage ship systems and optimize our performance. But Captain Lee Hyun is correct that you have never seen my full capabilities demonstrated in combat. Shall I prepare our cascade weapon systems for maximum deployment? The crew felt a chill run through them as they realized their ship was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. They had thought the gravity beam demonstration was impressive, but apparently that was just a tiny sample of what the Thunderstrike could really do in battle. Meanwhile, the Corvani emergency transmissions were reaching military bases and fleet commands throughout their empire. The messages described weapons that seemed to violate the known laws of physics and defensive systems that made their most powerful attacks completely useless. Admiral after admiral received these reports with disbelief. Supreme Commander Korth was the highest-ranking military officer in the Corvani Empire, and he was sitting in his command center on the capital world when the first emergency messages arrived. He read the reports 3 times before he could accept that they were not some kind of mistake or elaborate joke. 10 warships destroyed in 12 seconds by invisible weapons, Korth muttered to himself as he studied the tactical data. Complete molecular disintegration with no energy signature detected. This is impossible, unless these humans have discovered principles of physics that we do not understand. He immediately ordered 3 full battle fleets to respond to Admiral Vek's location, thinking that surely no single ship could stand against 200 of the Empire's finest warships. Even if the first reports were accurate, the humans must have limitations to their power. Other alien civilizations were also intercepting the Corvani distress signals, because emergency military transmissions were broadcast on frequencies that most races monitored. The news that a single human ship had destroyed 10 advanced warships without taking any damage spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. On a dozen different worlds, alien military leaders were calling emergency meetings to discuss what this meant for the balance of power in their region of space. The humans had been considered a minor species with limited technology, but these reports suggested they might be far more advanced and dangerous than anyone had realized. The Zephyrian Council, which governed a peaceful alliance of 6 star systems, held an urgent session to discuss whether they should contact Earth and offer diplomatic relations. The Krillian pirates, who had been planning raids on human colonies, suddenly canceled all their operations and decided to look for easier targets back aboard. The Thunderstrike Captain Lee Hyun was watching the tactical display as more and more alien communications networks lit up with discussions about the battle. The news was spreading faster than he had expected, and that was exactly what he wanted to happen. Arya spoke again with what sounded like amusement in her artificial voice. "Captain, I am detecting massive military movements throughout this sector of space. It appears that several alien civilizations are either preparing to investigate us or making plans to avoid us entirely. Our demonstration has had quite an impact." "Good," Captain Lee Hyun replied. "That was the whole point. We needed to announce to the galaxy that humanity is not as weak and primitive as everyone assumed. The age of other species pushing humans around is officially over." The Corvani reinforcements arrived exactly 6 hours later, just as Admiral Vex had desperately requested in his emergency transmissions. 3 complete battle fleets dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation with over 200 of the finest and most powerful warships that the Empire had ever constructed. Their weapons were already charging for battle, and their commanders were confident of victory. Supreme Admiral Korth himself was leading this massive fleet from his personal flagship, a gigantic dreadnought that was larger than most space stations. The ship bristled with enough firepower to destroy entire planets, and had been his home for over 20 years of successful military campaigns. He had received Admiral Vex reports, but refused to believe that any single vessel could be as dangerous as described. Captain Lee Hyun had used the 6-hour waiting period very wisely, instead of preparing for battle in the usual frantic way. His crew had eaten a leisurely dinner with cook Yang Min serving traditional Korean dishes that reminded everyone of home. Several crew members had even taken short naps in their quarters to make sure they were well rested. Engineer Kim Dae had written a long letter to his wife describing the beautiful nebula they had passed earlier in the week and telling her how much he missed her and their daughter. He sealed the letter carefully and put it in his personal belongings where it would be found and delivered if anything happened to him. The mood on the bridge was surprisingly relaxed and almost festive as the crew went about their normal duties. Park Mina was organizing her family photos and humming a popular song while she monitored the communication system's navigator. Oh Sung was reading a book about ancient Earth history that he had been meaning to finish for months. Dr. Song Hee was reviewing medical journals and learning about new treatment techniques that had been developed while they were away from Earth. Security Chief Yoon Hana was playing a card game with some of the off-duty crew members and winning consistently because she was very good at reading people's expressions. When the Corvani reinforcement fleets finally arrived and took up battle positions surrounding the lone human ship, the contrast was almost comical. More than 200 massive alien warships armed with the most advanced weapons their civilization could build were facing a single gray vessel that looked ordinary and unremarkable. "Captain," announced Park Mina, "the alien fleets are hailing us on all frequencies. They are demanding our immediate and unconditional surrender. The lead commander says he is Supreme Admiral Korth, and he seems very angry about what happened to the previous fleet." "Put him on the main screen," Captain Lee Hyun replied calmly. The image that appeared showed 3 alien admirals standing side by side on what was obviously the bridge of a very large and impressive warship. The center figure was wearing more medals and decorations than the others, and his expression showed both fury and arrogance in equal measure. "I am Supreme Admiral Korth of the Corvani Empire.